So, welcome to Conveyancing Matters. Today, we're going to be talking to Angela Hesketh from Pexa.
Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property.
So, hi, Angela, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, and thanks for inviting me on today.
No problem at all. So, we're a man down today. So, yeah, Lorraine messaged me this morning with an array of excuses as to why she couldn't make it. So, do apologise. Never mind. So, we thought we'd just start the interview today. Just maybe give us a bit of brief introduction as to your background.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So I've been in the property industry for 35 years now, which seems like forever and ever, but I'm not alone in that. I know that. So I am a dual qualified conveyancer. I was in private practice for 30 years, various different sizes and shapes of law firms. I think I've pretty much sat on every conveyancing seat you could imagine, right the way through from filing the post years ago, doing physical completions, all that kind of thing, to director of conveyancing and all the rest of it. So did all of that. And then I started in the last sort of 10 years of practice doing an awful lot of outside work of, recognizing, I suppose, the challenges that we had on a daily
Mm.
basis, and looking at how could I feed into the wider ecosystem, and how could we start to look to change those things, or adapt, or just work together better, because that's what I loved about conveyancing when I first went in. It was that real team game,
Yeah.
and it was a positive. It was the one area of law where you could say, we're going to do something real and positive here. We're actually going to create something good. Whereas for most areas of law, you're in it because you have to be in it, aren't you? And
Yeah. Yeah.
that didn't appeal to me at all. So I started doing a lot of work externally. I joined things like the Conveyancing Association, Home Buying and Selling Council, more latterly the Open Property Data Association, Digital Property Marketing Steering Group, all of those things that are looking at the wider picture. But I also shifted out of conveyancing practice into industry. Again, main aim for me was, how can I feed that conveyancing voice into the wider industry? And I think we'll all accept in conveyancing, there's never the time to do that when you're
Absolutely.
actually running a team and a department. So it was very much, how can I look to really contribute in a positive way?
Yeah.
And the move to Pexa
Yeah, that was my
was,
next question.
yeah. So the move to Pexa was because, well, it's a bit of a journey, really. I saw a presentation from Pexa years
Okay.
ago when I was at the Conveyancing Association. They weren't in the UK. They were coming over to say what was going on in Australia. And to me, the main, excuse me, the main thing in conveyancing was always money and title, and how can, if we can get that right and move that effectively, then there's lots of other challenges we have, of course there is, and particularly within conveyancing. But if we could get the core of it right, then maybe we could move the dial a little bit. So I'd seen this presentation, I thought, fantastic, this looks amazing. But like all things, had then started going, yeah, but how's that going to
Mhm.
work here, and what are we going to do, and all the rest of it. And then I spent a number of years just keeping an eye on what was happening. And they moved over. And then when I was at my previous job, which had come out of private practice but was still within the property industry, I did some work with them. And I
Okay.
thought, oh, they're actually going to do this in the
Mhm.
UK. And then they approached me to see if I would join them. So I thought, yeah, absolutely. You want to be part of something positive that's
Yeah.
actually going to do something good. That was that sounds very evangelistic, and I don't
Not
mean
at
it like
all.
that. But it's about it. I think we work so hard in this industry.
Yeah.
It's honestly, you want to be able to bring something good and positive into
Yeah,
it.
of course. Yeah. Yeah. So come on, what is PEXA?
What is
Explain it to
Apexa?
for those that don't know out there. Actually,
Yeah.
what is it?
Okay. So Pexa, it's a payment scheme primarily. So it sits in the same area of the Bank of England as the likes of Chaps and Faster Payments. So, and it's the seventh net payment scheme within that area. So it's not something that has lifted and shifted from Australia. We have created a UK specific payment scheme based on the experience of what we've done in
Yeah.
Australia, but not specific to that. So, and the difference with it is that it's property specific. So, whereas chaps or faster payments, you can send money to whoever for
Yeah.
whatever at any time. With Pexa, it's property specific, and what it does is coordinate the payments side of things with lodgement with land registry as well. So, it's all about having a central workspace where law firms come into and also lenders. So it's that joint workspace. So you don't have that disconnect that we have today between sending in your certificate of title and finding out whether anything what's
Mhm.
happening, all the rest of it. You know what's happening, but also you can bring your the buyer's conveyancer and the seller's conveyancer in there. You're not dealing with any of the what I would call conveyancing aspects. This is the financial aspect. So this is all about how the money is going to move through the process and making sure that the documents that you need to support lodgement at land registry are there and available so that lodgement can happen. So
Okay.
it combines moving the money and lodging with land registry.
Yeah.
But
So
what it does,
that
sorry,
term
so
cashless conveyancing is what I've heard a few times.
is it? Well, I suppose. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a different way of shifting the money. So I suppose today we would use as conveyancers our client account, wouldn't we? We would
Yeah.
apply for our money from the lender at a point where we think we may or may not be able to coordinate the transaction, just depending on what your timescales are. We'd pull that into our account and we'd also request the money from our buyer client or whatever in that situation. In this world, the money only moves from the lender's account at the point of completion. So you do all your preparation, you make sure you're all in place, you tell them that that's where you're at, and they approve it at the central level, and you've got absolute certainty that at that point in time, and again, you can confirm what time of the day you wanted to complete. At that point in time, that money will shift across without you having to chase, make sure, and all the rest of it. It's authorized. And
Yeah.
with your client money, this is why we've just been through our FCA authorization. So we already can move lender funds and have been doing that within the UK since 2022 because we're live within remortgage. But what we couldn't do is manage the client funds because we needed that extra layer of authority and authorization around that. So we've been through our FCA authorization program that came through about 8 weeks ago now, something like
Okay.
that. And what that means is we can also um, deal with the client money aspect as well. So from a law firm perspective, you've got that extra layer of security that yes, you will still have to do, your client. There's no getting away from that. Everyone has to do KYC these days. You also have to be happy with where the funding is coming from,
Yeah.
because again, that's part of your KYC. But once you have done that, you confirm that into the facility, into the workspace, and then Pexa will ensure that's where it comes from, and that's what the detail is. So you've got that extra layer of protection, which today is your accounts department and the level that we have of due diligence today.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe if we sort of delve into the nitty-gritty of how the system works. Okay. So we're sort of heading towards an agreed completion date. We're looking to exchange contracts. So how does it work practically then? How do you guys deal with the banks, deal with sort
Okay.
of money being passed? Do you contact the different lawyers? How does it actually work?
Okay, so what you would have, so if we deal with a purchase, that's the
Yeah.
easiest one, isn't it? Okay. What would happen is that workspace would be opened either by the law firm if they're the first in the to be instructed, or by the lender if they're lending the money. So you get confirmation that a workspace has been opened for Mrs. Smith to Acacia Avenue, whatever. At that point, that brings in the title from land registry, and it provides you with a structure which says here's the detail we've had in relation to the money. So, what's the purchase price? What's the mortgage advance? How are you making up the rest of the funding,
Yeah.
basically? The same thing that we would do today. It will also validate the title against what you've entered. So if it was the lender who said it's John Smith to Acacia Avenue, it will come up to say, no, we're looking at the title, it's John Andrew Smith. So
Okay.
we need to see that. We need to see what that, we need evidence to
So
be
there's a
able
layer
to
of
do that.
protection in there as well, not just money
Absolutely.
transfer. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the same with to Acacia Avenue. It says to Acacia Avenue, it's to a Acacia Avenue or whatever, all the random things that we come across when we're dealing with conveyancing. And then again, it will only allow the parties to go ahead once that's been validated. So
Okay.
you've got that layer. So I mean, it's not doing the conveyancing for you. Conveyancing is
Yeah.
a lot wider than that. We know that. But what it is doing is making sure that that transaction is going to be able to be lodged at land registry at the end. There isn't this sort of, we're going to throw it in, it's going to be rejected
Yeah.
immediately, which is such an issue generally within conveyancing. So it does that. So you're not only running through the title at that level to make sure you can lodge, but you're also running through the finances to say, okay, this is 250,000, this is how that's made up. Fine. We're going to then require that money to be in that state. So that's two different places, as we know. That's in relation to your mortgage advance. A message goes out to your lender to say, right, okay, we've now validated the title, we've made sure the information is in there, we've put the whatever it is, marriage certificate, change of name, you name it, we've all been there. And we're happy. The finances are balancing between us and the seller's lawyer. We now want you to authorize. So starts to get rid of that cot situation as well, because that's taken into account within that
Yeah.
information. But
Okay.
in addition to that as well, we have a standardized agreed mortgage deed with land registry. By that, I don't mean every mortgage deed is the same, because we know every lender has a different, but the
Yeah.
format is agreed, and every lender that's on the Pexa platform agrees to their form of mortgage deed. So in addition, the mortgage deed that is given to you as the law firm, now today we know some
Yeah.
lenders accept electronic signatures, some don't. So that may be that it's sent back into your case management system, or it may be that no, they allow electronic signature and we can do it in that
Yeah.
way. But either way, what you do know, it's the right mortgage deed, and
Yeah.
it will be accepted by land registry. So we've got that, and then we're layering into that QES once land registry have made that final decision of what that is. So again, QES, and by that I mean qualified electronic signature for anyone listening that hasn't come across it yet, um, will be available in our platform as well. So again, I think there's a lot of concern. Okay, great, we want to move to a safer signature bit, but
Yeah.
how do we do that? Who do we go to? How do we make
Yeah.
sure that that's right? So once it's available, once it's okay to use, then it will be available in there as well. So you can deal with that signature bit. Once you get to your certificate of title, as I say, a message goes out to your lender to say, okay, we're ready, everything's good to go, we're aiming for whatever completion date it is, will you approve? And then they approve, and you get the notification to say lender's approved, good to go. So you're then in a position, and then that will be a matter of saying, right, which of the time slots would you want
Okay.
within that for completion? So again, we get to a point, and this was the thing that, I mean, a Friday for me, whether I was a fee earner in the midst of the team of conveyancing, or whether I was a head of department, Friday, oh my God, nightmare. You can't do anything else. You can't,
Absolutely.
you're there just
Absolutely.
thinking, until such time as those completions, however many there are, have gone through, you've got to be on it. In this situation, you will know prior when that's going to happen. You'll be able to tell your clients, you'll be able to tell your agents, you'll be able to tell all of those things, so that you've again got certainty of when that's actually going to happen.
Okay. So how does it, so if we're covering off the banks and maybe firstly, are there many banks that are aligned and agreed to bid the platform? Are there
Okay, we've
many that
got a
aren't?
number, we've got a couple that are live and
Yeah,
transacting at the moment. There are, as we know, many banks with many
yeah,
different requirements and all the rest of it.
absolutely. Yeah,
Our focus at the moment is twofold: bringing on the banks in a manageable way to
yeah,
make sure that that's going to go forward, and that has its different challenges depending on the size and the
can imagine.
requirements
Yeah,
and all sorts of things,
of course.
and but also having transacting conveyances. So this isn't going to be it drops at some point and everybody
No, of
everywhere
course.
is going to be doing it. And I think in lots of ways that's good, because I think that would be too much of a shock. I think that would be imagine,
Yeah,
today you're going to do this way, tomorrow you're going to go into whatever this weird science of Pexa world is. So it is going to be a gradual thing. And it's a bit chicken and egg, as you can imagine. You've got to have lenders and conveyancers coming along, and of all different sizes. So to answer your question, no, we haven't got all the lenders on, and I think if we did, it would be more of a concern at this point. But
yeah,
that is our ambition, and like anything else, we need to prove ourselves. We need to show what that functionality does do, what we say it's going to do, both for lenders and for conveyancers. And then we've got to tie the two together as well, of which conveyancers are on which lenders panel,
yeah,
and all of those kind of things have all got to come. But what we will be able to do in the first instance is deal with the more simple transactions with certain lenders, certain types of transactions, to get people used to it,
yeah.
to get that sort of feel for it, to get the feedback as well. Because we also accept, yeah, we can reflect back and say, in Australia, we're now today dealing with around 92% of all property transactions
Wow.
across Australia. But that's been that's a 10-year journey.
Yeah,
That's something that we've had to get, and there's also got to be a lot of learning in that. And we're not coming in and doing is saying, oh, well, we've done it, we know what to do. Yes, we can gear something from that, but we also accept that it's also 10 years since that started. We've got to do it in a different way. We've got to use the tech in a different way to be able
yeah.
to deliver what people want. So this is a measured and gradual program, not something that's going to hit you in the face and think, oh my God, we didn't even see this coming.
Okay. So we're dealing with the lenders' funds. So once the lenders release the funds, is that coming to the Pexa platform?
No. So what happens is the funds, we we pull the funds from their account
Yeah.
and send it to where it's going.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
so in a remortgage, which is a lot easier to describe in this way, where you've got an incoming lender and an outgoing lender,
Yeah.
we will orchestrate the funds to go from the incoming to the outgoing,
Right.
and
Okay.
then only deal with the actual balance. So if there's a
Right.
balance that's
Yeah.
due, we would then put that to the consumer account or wherever it's going.
Yeah.
So we don't actually, unless that outgoing lender isn't anything to do with what we're doing, at which point we have to use a connecting bank
Yeah.
to take the money in and out of. But it's whereas today you'd have to hold it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Usually
Yeah.
12, 24 hours, whatever. In this scenario, it even if it touches the bank, it
Right.
literally comes across, touches out.
Right.
So
Okay. So what about the client money then? So we dealt with the bank.
yeah,
So let's just say the client's got to chip in, I don't know, 100K. How
yeah.
does that part work?
So in that situation, you would do your due diligence on your client.
Yeah.
You would put into the Plexa platform, Mr. Smith's taking it from Barclays Bank or this account number, and then you would tell us when the completion date is going to happen, or when exchanges, whatever. It just depends
Yeah.
which part of the transaction you're in. We will then provide the bank details that that fund needs to go in
Okay. Yeah.
for us to then be able to shift it. So in that situation, it's a matter of providing that information securely to be able to get that fund in from there. Now, when that happens is really down to the law firm and what their view is really from that perspective. So it's a slightly different way, and this is part because we, as I say, to this point we've been active in remortgage. We're going into the sale and purchase phase, which is where this becomes a lot more relevant. So this is what's going on with our FCA authorization and now the build up until launch, because we're only launching into the sale and purchase arena later this year. So all the mechanics of the when, the how, the what
Hmm.
of being worked through in
Yeah.
relation to that. Now we've got that authorization in relation to what would be the best scenario, both for the law firm and the consumer, and to ensure that you've got that security that you know that that's there.
Yeah. Because you mentioned timeframes earlier. Obviously, one of the big problems we have on the day of completion are sort of knowing, when money is going to be passing, that kind of thing. And maybe if a client's at the bottom of the list, these days it's not unusual now to be doing completions at sort of 3, 4, even 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm assuming this is something that's going to sort of, circumnavigate a lot of that.
Yeah, as I say, we have 6 slots during the day at the moment,
Okay.
different time scales, and
And what would those be?
they're anything from I'm going to show that I haven't done my homework exactly on
That's
this. I
okay.
know we've got six, and it goes from 8:40 in the morning, I think, through to 4:40 in the
Right.
afternoon
Okay.
is the last one. But the aim is that you're going to be able to decide which one's the best one for
Okay.
you and your
Yeah.
client, so that you're in a situation to be able to confirm that. That's the aim
Yeah.
of it. Now, clearly, in the same situations we've just talked about in relation to that growing of that functionality and also growing of the community, there will be aspects when we are all of the transaction. There'll be aspects when we're only dealing with one part of the transaction, you know?
Right. Okay.
So from that perspective, if we're at the beginning of the transaction, we'll be able to say that's going to happen at 10:40 this morning.
Yeah.
If we're in the middle of the transaction, there'll have to be if there's a disconnect, there'll have to be those funds coming in, won't there,
Yeah.
from
Yeah, so that was
whoever.
that was gonna be one of my next
Yeah,
questions. What
yeah, yeah,
happens if
yeah.
you're in a
In
chain
a
and you
chain.
don't know what time it would be?
Yeah, and it depends, what part of the chain you're in, as we
Yeah,
know. So when it hits us, we'll be able to confirm what time that will happen. So all your lender funds and everything else will be stacked,
yeah,
and then it will be a matter of funds in, right? The slot is, I don't know,
right.
240. So
Yeah,
you at least, whereas today, once it comes in and you have to deal with it and send it out, you've no idea when it's actually going to hit the next
of course.
one, have
Yeah,
you? And I think that's one of the concerns I always had. There was always those muddy areas where you get it into your environment, you're holding the ball.
mm,
You throw the ball out, no idea when it's going to come out the other end. Whereas we will be in position to be able to say, okay, we may not know when the ball's coming in that
yeah,
scenario in the early days if we haven't got that sort of wider impact. But what
yeah.
we will be able to say is the ball is in and it will be here at that time. So
Okay,
you've got even on the day of completion,
yeah.
you've got a higher level of understanding of where that is.
Okay, really interesting. So you mentioned at the moment it's just remortgages, but you're launching sale and purchases end of the year, did you say?
Yeah, so the
Okay.
aim is over the coming months, you will hear more and more about our preparation in relation to. We're saying it's a full market launch really, because obviously we've been transacting. We've done our first 150 million or so in remortgage, so we are regularly transacting in that area. But we understand that the attention and the I'm going to say excitement. I'm going to indulge myself in excitement for now. But the real functionality, if you
Yeah,
like, is once you can deal with sale and purchase, because that's where the pain point is
yeah,
for conveyancers, for lenders, and everybody else. So yeah, what we're now doing is the platform is ready, and we've just done our first pilot. You may have seen that on the news recently. We've put our first digital purchase through to test and make sure it all works. But then what what we're looking at is a full market launch later in the year, but really looking to involve conveyancers in that preparation towards that, so that they can look at how that would look, how that would feel, how would that impact on them, and what do they need to do from their perspective to make themselves comfortable with that.
Yeah, yeah. So I can imagine then you've got a lot of sort of challenges ahead. I'm assuming
Lots,
sort of
yeah.
onboarding lenders and maybe law firms as well, because it's
Yeah.
quite a big cultural change, isn't it?
Massive, and there's a lot of them. I mean,
Yeah,
there's around 4,500 law firms in this space. Now this contracts and expands quite regularly, and this is sort of the best guess based on the land
yeah,
registry data. But it's a huge amount, and it's a huge differential between different types as well.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of attention focused on how do we get the information across in the most effective way, and then how do we bring people along, and the best way to do that, and we'll have to have um, sections that we do, because we just as much as we can't drop everybody else in it, we can't drop ourselves in it
yeah,
completely either, so we do have to do this in a measured way. So it may be that that's available to limited people for periods of time as well, because we just need to make sure that we don't overstretch anyone in this situation. It's such an important, crucial part of the transaction that we need to be able to get people's confidence,
yeah.
not to try and run
Mm.
before we can walk. So yeah, it's and lenders the same. They will all have their own requirements in that.
Cool.
They'll all
Yeah.
have their own technology and how they want to consume this as well. So there's a lot to work through.
Yeah. Okay, Angela. Well, just to summarize then, so we've sort of gone through the sort of transferring of money, the certainty and the times. What other sort of benefits for those out there that are sort of slightly undecided would there be? So we've already gone down the road of that extra layer maybe in terms of protection,
Yeah,
possible fraud, mistakes. But you mentioned a few times now about integration with the land registry.
yeah.
So I'm assuming the registration process is going to be enhanced as well.
Yeah, so we've obviously got that validation process at the beginning, which I mentioned. So what this means is we can guarantee that you can lodge the application. That isn't to
Okay.
say, well, let's deal with requisitions in a moment, but what we get it to is a level where it can be lodged.
Yeah.
So the documents, depending on who is in the workspace, and as I say, it doesn't need to have everyone, but the more people that are in there, the better functionality you're getting. So
Yeah.
in a situation where you've got a buyer's lawyer and a seller's lawyer in, and your lender, then in that situation your mortgage deed would be uploaded before, your TR1 would be uploaded before, but not be able to be manipulated in any way because you've got the security there. And then ultimately it's automatically dated on completion and lodged with land registry. In a situation where you've only got one party involved, the buyer's lawyer, your mortgage deed is there.
Yeah.
From the TR1 perspective, you've obviously still got to get that from your
Right.
seller's lawyer, and then upload it. But it automates that lodgement, it validates it. And if we look again back to Australia, they went from a situation where their requisitions post that lodgement
Mm.
went down from 30 odd percent down to less than
Oh,
1%
wow.
in that environment. So what it's doing is reducing a lot of the standard form requisitions because you've done all that validation at the front end. And when I say all that validation, it's still at quite a simple level, but it's putting lodgement. But these are the ones that Land Registry talk about all the time that
Yeah.
create all of these problems, aren't they? Names, addresses, all the rest of
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
So you're cleaning that up, which ultimately what that means is from Land Registry's perspective, you've got a lot more capacity to deal with some
Yeah.
of the more involved ones. And if there are requisitions, they will come back through Pexa from that perspective. So
Okay.
you will have access, you'll from a central point of view, you'll be able to monitor it, but also from a lender perspective, because again, the bane of conveyancers' lives often is this continual chasing from lenders following completion and
Yeah.
registration, all the rest of it. They will also have that visibility. So again, you get away from this situation today where you're just in this constant need to justify what you're doing,
Yeah.
validate what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just doing my job. I'm just trying my best to get it. So there's that. There's the connectivity of that the lodgements is going to happen. So again, it can't be forgotten about. It can't be sort of we're so busy, it's over here and we can't get to it because it will happen. But also you've then got that loop of chasing that
Hmm.
starts to fall away because actually everybody knows what's happening.
Okay. Okay. And then just finally, just to almost finish off, I'm assuming you've had to sort of speak at length with the regulators of our professions, the SRO, the CLC. What's sort of been their general take on everything?
I think from the regulator's perspective, they're always very conscious of being neutral in
Yeah.
relation to what's going to happen, but they also accept that they've got to be receptive to things may not always be the same. And we've obviously had the consultation with SRA, haven't
Yeah.
we? And all of the angst and concern that that's caused. But there is a light on what's the future of finance
Hmm.
in law firms, not just in conveyancing, but in law firms. So there's got to be an element of, okay, what is the alternative and what does that look like and what are the concerns and what are the positives around that? So they are talking, but there's always got to be that justification in
Yeah.
relation to what's best for their membership. And
Yeah.
from our perspective, we also want to ensure that anything that from a conveyancer's perspective they would be concerned about, we've addressed
Yeah.
or are addressing. How does that work in relation to I don't know, my standard conditions of sale, my replies to requisitions, all of those very practical things. How do we get to a point where it isn't a requirement to do this, but it's also not a barrier? It's
Yeah.
also not something that you're going to say, well, I can't because my sister's account rule says this,
Yeah.
or
Of course.
my, it's very much trying to find the path in the middle, isn't it? That says, okay, look, you've got to have a very measured look at this and see what works for your business.
Yeah. What about the attitude of indemnity insurers? I'd imagine they'd be quite keen.
Yeah, well, again, we have that ongoing conversation in that we don't want to overpromise in this area because people have thrown about all sorts of promises in the past, haven't they? Oh, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that. The reality of it is with all of these things, yes, of course, if they can see that a lot of the common claims will be counted,
Mhm.
there is a massive advantage there, but it's got to be proven as well.
Of
So
course.
you've got to do your homework, you've got to make sure you've given that evidence, but then you've also got to prove it in practice. So, yes, it's exciting from that perspective. It's a real potential to gear a change. And for me, it's about could we get more insurers into the environment
Yeah.
because the risk comes down? And could we get a better choice for conveyancers in that? And could we make it so that conveyancing isn't seen like the drag on your indemnity insurance all the time?
Yeah.
It ultimately it's a tough job and it always will be, but anything that we can wrap around that says, okay, look, we recognize that some of these things are inevitable because of the type of housing stock we've got, but actually there's a lot of things we could um support with that's going to allow you to actually concentrate on the big stuff.
Excellent. So just to finish then, if there's law firms out there that are interested in having a chat, where's the best place to make contact with you?
Okay, so we are, I mean, by all means, email through to me, that's fine, or LinkedIn through to me. I am all over LinkedIn, as most people will know. That's fine. But also, we are shortly going to be launching as part of our website where you will actually be able to find out more and find out information. You can already sign up to our newsletter, so please do sign up to the newsletter. That will be in the build up to launch later this year, moving on a step in relation to do you want to come and join us? But in the meantime, if you want any more information, feel free to reach out to me.
Excellent. Well, look, Angela, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you coming on. I
Thank
wish you
you.
all the best, and yeah, it'll be very interesting to see later in the year how it all goes. Maybe we'll invite
Fantastic.
you on in a year's time to see what the update was.
Do you know what? That'd be great. Let's do that.
No worries. Take care then.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.